Wearing that arrogant HOA badge as if she were a sheriff, she stood with her arms crossed on my porch. Without saying anything, she gave me the document. I looked down, bold black letters stamped across the top, Notice of Demolition. You have 72 hours to remove the structure, she said flatly. My jaw dropped. My cabin? The one I built with my bare hands? Gone in 72 hours, or else? My blood ran cold, but behind the fear? Oh, there was rage. And I already knew, deep down, I wasn't just gonna let it go. I was gonna flip this whole HOA circus upside down. Before we jump into this insane journey, go ahead and tap that like button if you've ever dealt with HOA nonsense. Seriously, they can be worse than debt collectors. And don't forget to comment with your craziest HOA story. I promise you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button too if you love real stories with a twist of justice. Let's dive in. You know what's funny? I moved to that neighborhood to escape the madness. I wanted peace. After 20 years of working IT in a city that never slept, I wanted someplace quiet, someplace where the loudest sound was the wind moving through trees or a hawk overhead. I'd bought the land first, about 5 acres tucked at the back end of a growing neighborhood, a few minutes from the lake. It wasn't part of the original HOA plan when the land was first developed, or so I thought. The cabin? That was my baby. I'd spent 3 years building it out back. No contractors. No fancy company. Just me, some friends on the weekends, and a whole lot of YouTube tutorials. It was rustic but solid, reclaimed wood, an iron stove, solar panels on the roof. I even had an old-fashioned pulley system for the attic. My grandson loved spending weekends up there. We'd roast marshmallows, watch for deer, listen to owls call each other across the trees. It wasn't just a cabin. It was freedom. My little reminder that life didn't have to be all deadlines and city traffic. For almost a year after I finished it, no one said a word. The neighbors loved it. The few who saw it from their second-floor decks called it charming or a cool project. I even let the Thompson kids host a Halloween scavenger hunt there last fall. That's when the trouble started. Apparently, someone's guest, probably one of those HOA Karens with nothing better to do, spotted it and reported it to the board. Next thing I knew, I was getting a notice taped to my mailbox, unauthorized. Structure under review. I shrugged it off at first. I mean, I had documentation. The land was mine. The structure wasn't visible from the street. No utilities were hooked to the main grid. It wasn't a safety hazard. It wasn't even against the neighborhood's original plan, or so I believed. Then the second letter came. This time it was more serious. They claimed the cabin violated HOA covenants about unapproved dwellings. I called the office. No answer. I emailed. Got an auto-response. Finally, I showed up to a board meeting. And man, I wish I hadn't. The moment I walked in, I knew I wasn't welcome. The president, Cheryl, looked at me like I'd tracked mud on her marble floor. She went on some power trip about how structures outside the scope of the primary residence footprint needed pre-clearance. I calmly pointed out that my cabin was on private acreage, predating their newest amendments. She said that didn't matter, that, by living within HOA borders, I was subject to the full covenant list, regardless of purchase date. That's when she pulled out the kicker. They had voted, and I had 72 hours to demolish it or face daily fines and legal escalation. I walked out of there stunned. But the moment I got in my truck, that shock turned to slow, simmering fury. I'd paid my dues on time. I'd followed every ridiculous little rule, from grass height to mailbox color. And now they were coming for something personal? Something that brought me peace and joy and meant everything to my family. Hell no. I called my brother, a lawyer. We went over the HOA documents line by line. And guess what? There it was. Tucked away in Appendix B, Clause 2.3.9, structures existing prior to the HOA's last zoning expansion, 2018, may remain intact if deemed temporary and non-primary use by the owner and if not connected to utilities. My cabin ticked every box. That's when the idea hit me. If they could play technical games, so could I. I filed a formal rebuttal and asked for a hearing. That bought me a few weeks. Then I did the research, deep research. Turns out, the HOA had been using a sliver of my land for years, an old maintenance trail that cuts behind my property. They'd been using it for landscaping vehicles, garbage access, even emergency utility crew parking, without permission, without compensation. So I hit them with a certified letter. I told them that, due to unauthorized usage of my land for HOA operations, they would now owe me monthly rent, effective immediately, at market rate for industrial easement usage. I even included a full invoice, backed by a quote from a land use expert. And here's the sweet part, I priced it at 3 times what their entire HOA dues cost the average homeowner. Why? Because screw them, that's WHY.AT first? Radio silence. Then, the board lawyer emailed me, condescending, aggressive. Claimed my notice was baseless. My brother fired back with case law, zoning maps, satellite photos, and a polite little threat to escalate to municipal zoning court for trespass and financial damages. Suddenly, the tone changed. They offered a settlement discussion. I told them the only settlement I'd accept was this: drop the demolition order, formally recognize the cabin as a grandfathered personal use structure, and sign a waiver. Agreeing not to pursue any further action, in writing. Weeks passed. I waited. Checked my mail like a hawk. Every day felt like a gamble. Would they send a crew to tear it down? Would they escalate? But finally, a package came. Inside, a notarized agreement. They caved. I signed. The cabin stayed. And I never paid a dime. But here's the kicker. 2 months later, Cheryl put her house up for sale. Word on the street? She couldn't handle the fallout. Other homeowners had started questioning fees, pushing back on restrictions. My fight lit a fire. People started reading those HOA rules for the first time. That place? It changed. And me? I still wake up some weekends and head out to the cabin. I make coffee, open the windows, and listen to the breeze move through the trees. My grandson brings his sketchbook and sits on the porch with me. And every time I glance over at that old maintenance trail that used to be theirs, I smile. They tried to bulldoze me, but I outsmarted them. They gave me 72 hours, and I gave them a masterclass in legal chess. Here's what I learned: you don't have to scream to win. Sometimes, the best revenge is knowing the rules better than the people who wrote them. It's using calm, steady logic against hot-headed control freaks. And it's remembering your peace? Your little slice of joy? It's worth protecting. Stand your ground, but do it smart. Do it sharp. And always have receipts. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and drop your own HOA horror story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And hey, if you've got that one nosy neighbor with too much free time, send them this video. Just for fun. Smirking face.